He came home early on New Year's Eve expecting silence. What he walked into instead would have killed a lesser man and almost killed him anyway. Kwang Austin didn't use the front entrance of his Manhattan penthouse like normal people. He never did. He moved through the lobby the way smoke moves through a cracked window, quiet, purposeful, leaving no trace. His black coat carried the cold of the streets. The elevator doors closed behind him like a secret. He had maybe an hour before midnight swallowed the city whole, and all he wanted was 1 hour of peace before the chaos. He'd earned that, or so he thought. The penthouse door opened without resistance, and then a body crashed into him from the left side so hard his spine found the wall before his mind caught up. Something clamped over his mouth, rubber, firm, desperate. A woman's voice broke against his ear like she was already terrified of what came next. "Don't move, don't make a sound, please." He recognized her in the dim light, Jasmine, his maid. The woman whose last name he had never once bothered to learn in 2 full years of her working in his home. She dragged him sideways into a narrow service closet, her grip stronger than anything her small frame had any right to produce. The door stayed cracked open just wide enough to see into the living room. And what Kwang saw through that sliver of light rearranged everything he thought he knew about his life. His wife Kara walked in wearing silk and a smile he hadn't seen in years. The kind of smile that belongs to someone who has already won something. His younger brother Mock followed behind her, shirtless, his hands sitting on her waist like he owned the space she occupied. They were laughing, not nervous laughter, not guilty laughter. The easy, comfortable laughter of 2 people who had been doing this for a long time and had stopped worrying about being caught. Mock's voice carried through the penthouse like warm poison. "How much longer do we have to wait?" Kara turned in his arms and traced one finger along his jaw, the kind of gesture she used to say for Kwang, maybe once. "A long time ago," she said, "Relax, baby. I tripled the dose in his green juice this morning. His kidneys are already struggling. The doctor said his liver enzymes are critical." She kissed his brother's neck and smiled against his skin. "By midnight tonight, the king falls and everything he built becomes ours." Inside the closet, Kwang's legs stopped working properly. Every morning he woke up dizzy. Every evening the room tilted when he stood. Every week he told himself it was stress, it was the weight of running an empire, it was the price of being untouchable. He had blamed everything on this earth, except the one thing that made terrible, devastating sense. The green juice. Every single morning. Kara bringing it herself, insisting, smiling. "It's good for you, keeps you strong." His own body had been a crime scene for 3 months and he hadn't even known it. Jasmine's hand found his wrist in the darkness. She pressed one finger to her lips. Her eyes were terrified but steady. "Stay quiet. Stay alive." Outside, Kara's voice drifted closer to where they stood hidden. She said something that made Kwang's blood drop 10 degrees, said that Jasmine had been watching too closely lately, that she noticed too much. Mock's answer came back like ice in a glass. "After tonight, it won't matter. We'll cut her loose, send her back to wherever she came from." And then Kara, with a voice as light as if she was discussing dry cleaning, said they could also make sure she couldn't talk at all. In that moment, standing in a service closet in his own penthouse, while his wife planned 2 murders out loud, Kwang Austin understood 3 things with perfect clarity. He was supposed to die tonight. His empire was a lie, built on betrayal. And the only person in this building fighting to keep him breathing was a woman he had treated like furniture. Jasmine slowly pulled a small glass vial from her uniform pocket and held it up in the thin line of light coming through the crack in the door. White crystalline residue clung to the inside. Her lips moved without sound. "I know what they did. If you need to know whether Kwang Austin makes it out of that closet alive, if you want to see what happens when a man who built an empire on fear finally meets real courage, then hit that subscribe button right now and join us at City of Tales. Because what happens next happens fast and it changes absolutely everything. Jasmine kept one hand pressed over his mouth until Kara and Mock's voices moved toward the back of the penthouse and a door clicked shut. Then she finally released him. He sucked in air that tasted like dust and cleaning chemicals and survival. She whispered at a volume that barely qualified as sound. She told him she had been in the guest room 2 weeks ago replacing linens when she first overheard them, said Kara had told Mock she loved him. I said she had described Kwang as a monster who treated people like property, said the world would be better when he was gone. Then Jasmine pulled a second vial from her other pocket. This one sealed with tape. Same residue. She had collected it from the sink drain 3 months ago when she first noticed Kara sending her out of the kitchen during juice preparation. She had watched through the pantry mirror. She had known. And she had said nothing until right now, this moment, when not saying something would have made her complicit in a murder. Kwang tried to move toward the door. His vision tilted hard. The closet walls shifted at an angle that made no physical sense. Jasmine caught his arm before he hit the floor and held him steady with the kind of strength that comes from having already decided to do something terrifying. She said they had to move. If Kara and Mock found him now, there would be no waiting for midnight, no clean story, no pretending. She eased the closet door open and scanned the penthouse the way someone scans a space they have spent 2 years memorizing from the corners. Then she pulled him forward into the service corridor. The narrow hallway that ran behind the walls of his home, the hallways he never used, never thought about, never once considered. He had built an empire on controlling every variable. He did not know his own house. There's a staff elevator, she whispered. Goes straight to the parking garage. No cameras in the service corridors. You removed them yourself. Said you didn't need to watch the help. The words hit him somewhere honest. They descended. The elevator doors opened onto the garage and the smell of gasoline and cold concrete hit him like the floor of a different world. His Mercedes sat 20 feet away, armored, bulletproof, capable of absorbing a direct strike. Jasmine walked past it without slowing. She led him to a dented Honda in the back corner, the kind of car that disappears in traffic because nothing about it suggests it matters. We can't take your vehicles, she said. They're tracking everything registered to you. Your phones, probably your watch. He collapsed into the passenger seat. The upholstery was worn but clean. A rosary hung from the rearview mirror. The whole car smelled like vanilla and something harder to name. She started the engine, reversed out smoothly, and navigated toward the gate. As they passed the security monitor, Kwang caught the image of Kara on the penthouse balcony 30 floors above, phone to her ear, scanning the street below. Jasmine saw it too. Her foot never wavered. They drove for 10 minutes in silence before she pulled into a dark construction site and killed the engine. She turned to face him and told him to hand over everything. The watch, the rings, the phone, every traceable thing he owned. The watch was his father's, a Patek Philippe, scratched from decades of use, the only physical piece of the man he had kept when he took over the organization, the only thing that still made him feel like someone's son instead of just a king. Jasmine said she was sorry, said he had to choose between his memory and his life. He took the watch off. He took the rings off. He handed all of it to a woman whose last name he had never known. She walked to the concrete mixer running nearby, its drum rotating with leftover material from the day's work, and dropped everything inside without ceremony. The symbols of everything he had been disappeared into grey. She said when they track the signal, they'll find this site. That buys us time. They drove deeper into Brooklyn, into blocks his organization technically controlled but that Kwang had never once set foot on. Kids were playing basketball under streetlights in the cold, music leaked from apartment windows. A cluster of women stood outside a laundromat passing a cigarette and laughing at something private. Nobody looked at the beat-up Honda twice. Kwang finally understood the power of being invisible. He had spent 15 years building the opposite. He asked how long she had been watching. Long enough, she said. To know the difference between loyalty and lies. She told him about Taeyang coming to the penthouse the previous week, his most trusted lieutenant, the man who had taken a bullet for Kwang in a warehouse 4 years ago. She had seen money change hands between him and Mock in the study. She had not understood what it meant then. She understood now. His inner circle was not his anymore. She pulled into an alley behind a worn apartment building in Brownsville. Told him the address in his HR files was her aunt's place in Crown Heights. Better impression, she had said when she applied. Nicer neighborhood. She actually lived here. Rent was cheaper and no one from his world would ever think to look. He tried to get out of the car on his own. His legs made their own decision. She caught him. Her apartment was a single room, a fold-out couch, a kitchenette, bars on the windows, a small artificial Christmas tree made from nothing, decorated with paper snowflakes and dried orange slices and a few strands of tinsel. On one wall, photographs. A woman with the same face as Jasmine, older, warm. Jasmine in a graduation gown. A young man in military dress uniform with serious eyes. My brother, she said. Elvis. He died 4 years ago. Then the room lurched. Nausea hit Kwang like a wave and kept coming, and Jasmine was already there with a plastic basin before he finished processing what was happening. When it passed, she brought water and a cold cloth and wiped his face the way someone does when they have done it before for someone they loved. She told him arsenic attacks organs slowly. She said his kidneys were struggling and his liver was right behind them. She said it had been building for months. He asked her again why she was helping him. She looked at the photograph of her brother on the wall. She said Elvis had worked for a man in Detroit, a man like Kwang. He had run operations, managed territory, done what was asked, until he found out his boss was using children, moving them through Detroit to other cities, using them. Elvis tried to stop it, went to police first. They were paid, went to the FBI, wore a wire, built a case. They found out and left his body in an alley with a needle in his arm and a story that held just enough to close the file. Jasmine came to New York after the funeral, took the job with Kwang's household because it paid better than anything else she could find. She told herself she would keep her head down, survive. But then she saw what Kara was doing. And he saw the pattern, saw the slow death taking shape in plain sight. And she thought, not again. Not on her watch. She said she thought Kwang was a man who had forgotten other people were human, but she said he wasn't dead yet. That meant he could change. That meant he had a choice her brother never got. Then someone knocked on the door. 3 hard strikes. A man's voice demanding she open up. She crossed to the window first, lifted the curtain an inch, looked down, turned back with her face drained of colour. They found us. She smoothed her uniform, straightened her posture, and walked to the door. She opened it on the chain. One of Mock's personal security stood in the hallway with a scar through his left eyebrow and a smile he had clearly practiced. He said Mock just wanted to make sure she got home safely. She said she was fine. He pointed out that her car had been seen leaving the garage at 6:47 with a passenger. She said he must be mistaken. She took the subway, always had. He could check her Metro card. Kwang watched her from across the room where he stood pressed flat against the wall, barely breathing. He watched her hold a conversation with a man who could kill her without consequence, and she did not break. Not once. Something shifted in his chest that he did not have a name for yet. The man outside pushed harder. She pushed back. Told him if he wanted to search the apartment, he needed a warrant and she would be calling the police either way. The man laughed and said everyone in this neighborhood knew who the police worked for. Maybe, she said, but they still have to pretend they don't. And you don't want that attention right now. Not while you're trying to run things quietly. He laughed for real that time. Called her smart, said she had won the night and walked away. She turned to Kwang the moment the door closed. 90 seconds, she said, probably less. They're coming back to kick it in. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the window. They went down the fire escape. The door behind them exploded inward as their feet hit the second-floor landing. She sent the ladder down before the sound finished echoing, and they climbed into the alley below at a speed his poisoned legs had no business matching. She pulled him through a basement corridor she clearly knew from memory, through the dark and the smell of old pipes, 3 blocks east, emerging in a different alley like they had passed through a seam in the city. He collapsed against the brick. She pulled out a burner phone and dialed from memory. Violet. It's me. I need that favor. Not tomorrow. Right now. She told him they were going to see someone who understood what it looked like when the system failed you completely. She told him Violet was the person who had explained to her 3 months ago what arsenic poisoning looked like, what to collect, how to protect herself. You've been planning this for 3 months, he said. Preparing, she corrected. There's a difference. I didn't know when I'd have to move. I just knew I had to be ready. They walked through the New Year's night to a shuttered bodega in the middle of a dark block. She knocked. 3 short, 1 long. A woman in her 50s opened the door, silver locks, eyes that had been kind and hard-earned at the same time. She looked at Jasmine first, then at Kwang. And her expression said she had already made a decision she was not entirely at peace with. You brought me the Mafia man, she said flatly. I brought you a man who's dying, Jasmine replied. Will you help? Violet stepped back and let them in. 3 locks behind her, a chain, a bar across the frame. The back room had a battery lamp and a folding table covered in medical supplies. She pulled on gloves and looked at Kwang like a general reading difficult terrain. She named what he ran on her streets without blinking. The protection money. The pills that had killed 3 teenagers last year. He said yes to every charge because there was no point in lying to the only person standing between him and his organs shutting down. She said she was going to help him anyway. Not because he deserved it, because Jasmine did. And because every life deserved at least one chance at something better. Even his. The needle went in. Cold liquid spread through him like ice water finding all the cracks. Violet said the arsenic was chronic. His kidneys were in trouble and his liver was close behind. Another week at the same dose, and there would be no coming back from it. While she worked, Kwang said quietly that he had cameras hidden in every room of the penthouse. Cameras his family did not know about. They recorded to an encrypted drive in his private office behind a false panel in the bookshelf. Jasmine said she knew the panel. She had noticed it 2 months ago. He stared at her. I clean that office twice a week, she said. I notice things. Violet said if there was footage, it changed everything. Said that was leverage. Said that was how he survived. The 3 of them looked at each other across the dim light of a makeshift clinic in the heart of Brooklyn and understood without speaking what had to happen next. They had to go back. Before Kwang could say another word, Jasmine crossed to the window and lifted the curtain. A black SUV sat across the street with its engine running. A teenager on the corner had his phone to his ear and his eyes on Violet's door. The moment he saw them looking, he turned and moved quickly in the other direction. Violet recognized him, said he ran numbers for someone who owed money to Kwang's organization, said fear made people talk. She told them she would walk out the front and create a scene about being harassed. She said people in this neighborhood knew her. You said if they put hands on her, the whole block would hear about it, and Mock's men did not need that exposure right now. Kwang asked why she would take that risk for him. She said she wasn't. She was taking it for Jasmine. She pulled her coat on and went out the front, and her voice rose immediately on the sidewalk, loud, indignant, entirely convincing. They moved through the back room into the alley. The medication was working. His legs were not entirely his own, but they were moving. Jasmine pulled him through the neighborhood by shortcuts only someone who had lived in it for years could have mapped in her mind. They surfaced on a main street, blending into couples and groups heading toward bars, toward midnight celebrations, toward whatever normal people did on New Year's Eve when no one was trying to kill them. The subway entrance was ahead. They descended. A train was already waiting on the platform. They slipped through the doors as they closed, and Kwang caught a glimpse of a scar through a left eyebrow in the crowd on the other side of the glass. Moving, too late. The train lurched into the tunnel. He sagged against a pole. Jasmine stood beside him with one hand resting on his arm, steady as always. He said thank you and meant it down to the bone. She said, don't thank her yet. They still had to get the drive, and that meant going back to the penthouse where Kara and Mock were waiting. The train rocked through the dark tunnel toward Manhattan's light. Normal passengers scrolled through phones and dozed and argued about whether a particular action movie counted as a Christmas film. Kwang watched them and felt the enormous distance between their world and the one he had built, a world that was now eating him alive. He asked what she thought should happen to Kara and Mok when it was over. She said they should face what they had done, legally, on the record, undeniably. She said the goal was to end them without becoming them. He studied her face, asked if she had thought about this. She said she had thought about almost nothing else for 3 months. He asked her to call him Kwang, not Mr. Austin, not boss, just Kwang. She looked at him for a long moment before saying it. His name sounded different in her voice, more real, like it belonged to a person instead of a title. They came up out of the subway into Manhattan and found a Korean restaurant called Ari Rang on a side street. Violet had arranged it. An older woman met them at the door, her face moving through fear and old anger before settling into something harder. She looked at Kwang and said he was the reason her son had nightmares. He said he was sorry and meant that too. She walked them through the kitchen to a back office where a young man in his mid-20s sat at a desk with the posture of someone prepared for the worst possible thing. He had worked Kwang's security detail for 2 years before he couldn't do it anymore. He had pulled schematics of the penthouse security system on a laptop before they even sat down. His name was Jin. He showed them the blind spots, the camera that covered the hallway outside the private office. He explained how a hidden bathroom connected the master bedroom to that office through a panel behind the towel cabinet. Yet he handed Jasmine a one-use keycard device that would get them through the service entrance. Told her the code for the staff elevator was still 4729 because Mok didn't know it existed. Jin said if they got caught, his brother would kill him. Kwang said his brother wasn't going to be in a position to kill anyone, not after tonight. Jin looked between them for a long moment. Then he stood up and started helping. They left through the restaurant's back door. The city was louder now, almost midnight, people spilling onto sidewalks with bottles and foil hats, and the wide-open hope that comes with counting down to something new. Kwang watched them from inside whatever he had become and felt nothing except the drive in his chest to finish this. So they found a coffee shop still open and sat in the back corner with cups of black coffee neither of them touched. They needed a place to wait, a place to think. He asked if she was scared. Terrified, she said. But fear is not a reason to stop. It's a reason to be careful. He asked why she seemed so calm. She said she wasn't calm. She was focused. She said when Elvis died, she spent 6 months burning from the inside out on pure fury. Said anger without direction just destroys the person carrying it. She had learned to channel it, to make it useful. He said she made helping him sound almost accidental. She said he just happened to be part of the equation. He said if they got out of this alive, he wanted to actually know her. Not as his employee, not as the person who saved him, just as Jasmine. Her expression shifted, as she said survive tonight first, then they would see. At 12 minutes past midnight, while Manhattan screamed itself hoarse with celebration and the sky overhead dissolved into gold and silver, they approached the penthouse building through the side entrance. Jasmine pressed the card device to the reader. The light stayed dark for long enough to feel like failure. Then it went green. The lock surrendered. The service corridors were exactly as she had described. Narrow and functional and completely invisible to the life being lived on the other side of those walls. They climbed 4 flights of stairs, listening at every landing, moving on silence. The penthouse level opened onto a short hallway connecting to the kitchen. She checked through the narrow service window. Dark, empty. Kara and Mok were at Chin Yong's party in Queens. Oh, they moved through the kitchen, through her space, the place where she had watched Kara measure white powder into a glass every morning and had collected the evidence and made a choice. She led him through the master bedroom and into the bathroom, all marble and extravagance and cold luxury. She felt along the back of the towel cabinet until something clicked and a section of wall swung inward. Found this 2 months ago, she said. thought it was decorative. They moved through the passage, emerged into his private office. The room looked exactly as he had left it. The mahogany desk, the leather chairs positioned to intimidate whoever sat across from them, the floor-to-ceiling windows full of city light, his wedding photo on the desk. Kara's smile frozen in something that looked like devotion and was actually calculation. And he found the hidden panel in the bookshelf. Pressed. It opened. The encrypted drive was still there, untouched. 3 months of footage from every room in the penthouse. Everything recorded and stored and waiting. Then a sound stopped both of them cold. The office door opened. They moved behind the heavy curtains framing the window and pressed themselves flat against the glass. Through the fabric, Kwang watched Kara walk in with her phone against her ear. She told whoever was on the other end that it was handled. Said Kwang was probably dead in an alley somewhere by now. Said the dosage that morning should have been more than enough. Then her eyes moved to the bookshelf, to the open panel, to the empty space where the drive had been. Her face went white in a way that could not be faked. She lunged for the desk drawers, was searching frantically. And then she froze. Her eyes found the curtain, found the outline of 2 people pressed against glass that suddenly felt very thin. She whispered that he was supposed to be dead. He stepped out from behind the curtain and said not yet. Her hand moved toward the desk drawer. Jasmine crossed the room in 3 steps and slammed it shut on her fingers before she reached what was inside. Kara cried out in pain and turned the full force of her hatred on Jasmine. She said the maid had no idea what she had done. Jasmine said she had saved him, which was more than Kara had ever done. Then footsteps hit the hallway outside. The office door came open. Mock stood there with 3 armed men behind him. His face ran through disbelief and arrived somewhere dangerous. He said Kwang was supposed to be dead. Kwang said he kept hearing that tonight. He shoved Kara toward Mock and grabbed Jasmine's wrist and pulled her toward the window. He picked up the heavy paperweight from the desk and threw it at the glass. It spiderwebbed. He kicked it twice and the cold rushed in. Fireworks burst outside, covering the sound of breaking with celebration. They went through the window and down the fire escape. Fast. Mock appeared above them with a weapon and the shot sparked off metal less than a foot from Kwang's head. They dropped to the alley below. Jasmine landing hard but holding. Kwang right behind her, every poisoned muscle screaming. They ran into the crowd of the new year. 2 people disappearing into a million. The encrypted drive was in Kwang's jacket pocket. They had the evidence. Now they just had to live long enough to use it. Yet they spent the rest of the night moving. Subways to nowhere. Side streets Jasmine knew. Back rooms of places that didn't advertise. By dawn they were in Violet's clinic again, watching the footage on a borrowed laptop. It was worse than Kwang had prepared for. Kara measuring poison with clinical precision. Mock coaching. Days of it. Weeks. A record so complete, it removed every reasonable doubt. And then a video that made Kwang go still in a way that had nothing to do with the arsenic. Kara and Mock in his bedroom, discussing what they would do with his organization, discussing forging his will, discussing Taeyang, who they had apparently purchased months ago. Kara's voice was light and cold at the same time, the way a very controlled person sounds when they have already made peace with what they are doing. Jasmine stopped the video. "Oh, this destroys them," she said. "It's not enough," Kwang replied. "They're not in New York anymore. They're at Chin Yong's compound and Chin Yong will use this to start a war over my territories. Evidence can disappear when the right people control the room." Then his burner phone rang. Taeyang's voice came through, strained and fast. He said he hadn't betrayed Kwang, said Mock had shown him photographs of his daughter at her school playground, and explained precisely what would happen to her if Taeyang didn't cooperate. Said he had been feeding Mock false information for 3 weeks while stalling the takeover. Said Chin Yong was presenting Kara and Mock as the new leadership that night and had snipers positioned on the roof for the moment Kwang showed up at the front entrance. Kwang told him to be inside Chin Yong's compound with as many loyal men as he could gather. Said to be ready. Said to do nothing until he saw the signal. He hung up and told Jasmine they were walking into a trap. She said that sounded like a terrible idea. He said it was the only idea. Chin Yong wanted a public confrontation. Fine, they would give him one. On their terms, with the footage already sent to people who could not be silenced or bought. They spent the next 4 hours moving the evidence into the world. Violet encrypted copies and routed them through channels she had clearly used before to reach federal prosecutors and the FBI's Organised Crime Division, and a journalist she trusted completely. Jin gave them updated layouts of Chin Yong's Queen's compound, entry points, guard rotation timing, blind spots in the camera coverage. Before they left, Kwang found himself alone with Jasmine in Violet's back room for a moment. He tried to tell her she didn't have to come, that she had already done more than anyone had a right to ask, that she could disappear right now and start somewhere clean. She stood up and crossed to where he sat. She looked down at him and said she had watched him struggle for 3 months to do things that should have been simple. Getting up from chairs, climbing stairs, finishing sentences. She had watched him dying and not knowing why. She said she could have walked away then, could have called it none of her business. Instead, she said she had known that even a man who builds an empire on fear deserves a chance at something different if he is willing to reach for it. She asked if he thought he was willing. He said he was here, wasn't he? She handed him the backup drive. Their fingers touched and neither of them acknowledged it and both of them felt it. He said when this was over he wanted to know her. Really know her. Just as Jasmine. She said survive the night and they would see what happened. Chin Yong's Queen's compound was everything power looks like from the outside. 12-foot walls, razor wire, cameras on every angle. Inside, the city's criminal hierarchy sat around a long table in expensive suits, gathered under the pretense of resolving the Austin situation cleanly. Kara and Mok sat at Chin Yong's right hand, dressed like the legitimate heirs to something they had stolen. Chin Yong himself sat at the head, silver-haired and composed, making pronouncements about stability and territory and transition. Kwang and Jasmine were already inside. Taeyang had arranged the catering van. Real staff who had been paid to ask no questions. They moved through the industrial kitchen in black uniforms carrying empty trays, and no one looked at them twice. Kwang pulled out his phone. The footage was already uploaded and ready to distribute. He looked at Jasmine. She said stop asking her if she was sure. He sent the files to every phone in the main hall simultaneously, watched the screens light up one by one across the room. Then he walked through the kitchen door. The silence came in waves, starting at the door and rolling toward the head of the table. Conversations stopped mid-word. Heads turned. Someone dropped something heavy. Kwang told the room to sit down and watch their phones. They watched. Kara measuring poison. Mok guiding her. Weeks of footage compressed into 30 seconds of clarity. Kwang let it play long enough for every person at that table to understand exactly what they had almost been made to legitimize. He said his wife and his brother had tried to kill him for money. When they failed, they had run to Chin Yong, offering stolen territory in exchange for cover. Chin Yong said the video could be fabricated. Taeyang stepped forward and said it had already been authenticated. Already time-stamped. Already in the hands of the FBI, along with 3 months of physical evidence. 2 of the neutral gang leaders spoke up immediately, said this was a family matter, not a territorial dispute. Said they had come for a legitimate transition and there wasn't one. Said they were leaving. Chin Yong's control of the room began to slip at the edges. And then Mok, her cornered and furious and unwilling to accept what was happening, pulled a weapon and aimed it at Kwang. He shouted that Kwang had humiliated them. Said Kwang had treated them like they were nothing. He never finished the sentence. Jasmine had already moved, pulling Kwang sideways as the shot went wide. The room erupted. Taeyang's men came out of positions around the hall. Chin Yong's guards responded. Everyone's weapons ended up pointing at the same 2 people. Chin Yong told Mok to lower the gun in a voice that had no patience left in it. Said Mok had just started a war in his house without permission. Mok dropped the gun. His whole body seemed to collapse from the inside. Chin Yong told Kwang to take his people and leave, said the matter was resolved, said Kara and Mok would face consequences. Not Kwang's kind. His. It wasn't the justice Kwang might have wanted 3 months ago. But 3 months ago, he would have called something very different justice. He looked at Kara across the room. 5 years of a marriage built on performance. He told her quietly that he had loved her once, or thought he had. He had believed something real could exist inside all the violence he had chosen to live in. He said he had been wrong. She started to say his name. He told her not to apologize, not to explain. He told her to live with what she had chosen. Then he turned to Jasmine and said, "Let's go." They walked through Chin Yong's compound and everyone moved out of their way. 3 days later, Kara and Mok were in federal custody. Chin Yong had turned them over himself, so washing his hands of the embarrassment with the efficiency of a man protecting his own reputation first. The charges were serious. The evidence was overwhelming. The years ahead of them looked very long. The arsenic was leaving Kwang's body slowly, the way damage always leaves. Violet had connected him with a real doctor outside his organization's reach. His strength was returning. Along with it, something that had been absent from his life for long enough that he almost didn't recognize it when it showed up. Clarity. He stood in his penthouse for the last time. Taiyang stood beside him, uncomfortable, asking about expansion, about getting back to normal operations. Kwang said no. He told Taiyang he was stepping back, said the organization was going to move legitimate, slowly and carefully, but in that direction. No more trafficking, and no more protection money extracted from businesses just trying to survive. No more threatening people who were already afraid. Taiyang asked why. Kwang said he had been dying in the middle of everything he built and hadn't noticed. Said the only person who had seen it was someone he had treated like she didn't exist. He left Taiyang standing there, took a photograph of his parents, some clothes, his father's watch, which Violet had quietly retrieved from the concrete before it cured completely, cleaned and returned without comment. He took the subway to Brooklyn. She was outside her building bringing groceries in when he got there. She stopped when she saw him, the bags balanced in her arms, her expression cautious and open at the same time. She started to say Mr. Austin and corrected herself mid-word. Just Kwang, he said. Had he told her he had come to apologize? 2 years in his home. He had never asked about her life, never thanked her, never seen her. He said she had saved him when she had every reason to walk past and let the story end differently. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. He said she was the bravest person he had ever met, and he meant it the way you mean something when it took you a long time to understand. It was true. She said she had done what was right. He said he knew. And he said he wanted to spend whatever time came next learning how to do the same. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small box. She said his name like a question. He opened it. A simple ring. Nothing meant to impress. Something meant to last. He said he wasn't doing this because he owed her anything. Said he was doing it because for the first time in his life he was choosing something real over something powerful. Said he wanted to build a life where he never stopped seeing her. Tears ran down her face and she didn't try to stop them. He said she had given him a reason to stay alive when he was too blind to even know he needed one. He asked if she would marry him. Not because of what either of them had survived, because of who they might become together if they chose it. She looked at the ring. She looked at him. She thought of Elvis, of second chances, of the long distance between mercy and justice, and how sometimes love was what closed that gap. She said yes. Then she said she was keeping her apartment. He laughed. A real sound, unguarded, the kind that surprises you when it comes out. He slipped the rings on her finger and it fit like it had been waiting there. They stood on a cracked Brooklyn sidewalk with the city moving around them. Music came from somewhere above. A plane drew a white line across the winter sky. Life continued in every direction, complicated and ongoing and not waiting for anyone to catch up. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her waist. He felt something that was not power and not control, and not the weight of everything he was supposed to be. He felt the particular peace of being known by someone who had seen all of it and stayed anyway. 3 months ago, he had been dying in a penthouse full of luxury and lies. Today, he was standing on a sidewalk in Brownsville with a woman who had saved his life not because she was obligated to, but because she had decided a long time ago that watching someone die when you could have stopped it was not something she was willing to do again. The empire was behind him, the future was unmapped, but her hand was in his. And that was something real, maybe the first real thing he had chosen in a very long time. If this story stayed with you, if any part of Jasmine's courage felt familiar, if you have ever been the person in the room that no one noticed until the moment that mattered most, then this story was made for you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you believe people can change when the right person refuses to give up on them, drop a heart in the comments right now. Let's hear from you. Subscribe to City of Tales for more stories about love found in unexpected places, courage that doesn't announce itself, and the quiet power of being seen.